right, so let's give a little summary of what we where we stopped yesterday. Yesterday we started with thinking about the things that we hold dear to our heart. What are the things that we value? And some of those things that we named were freedom. We value our freedom, our families, health, and our jobs. Those things are important to us. And so we have to start looking there first so we can get a good indication of how do we protect those things that we value. Because we looked at also how low-risk choices protect the things that we value, and high-risk choices put those things in jeopardy. So that's where we started. What is important to me? And we went to learning how to protect and prevent, because that's really what we're geared to do. We want to prevent problems from happening, and we want to protect the things that we value. And so we went from those things to protecting and then preventing. And then we talked about, too, what type of person can develop addiction to alcohol and drugs. And so we named some people. We say weak-willed people, and we justified those things because you can do that. You can look at a weak-willed person and say, hey, I see a reason for that person being addicted. They don't have as strong a will to do things. When things get tough, they break down, cave in. And so drinking, would be a thing that they would do to overcome that. We looked at depressed people, and we can justify that. Because of depression, you need something to, help you to get back up and overcome. We can see that drinking, that may be something that can be justified as well. We also looked at poor people having problems, managing their financial situation. That can lead to depression again. And so we can see how these things can be justified in our minds. And also we looked at personality traits. We wanted to know if there is a particular personality trait that leads us to be more susceptible to being addicted. And we found out that we don't have a certain personality type. The research that we looked at disproved everything that people say. Because that's where we started. What will people say will be the type of people that can develop addiction. And it led us, the research showed us that when we were looking at the people, the live experiences, those people told us that they thought that they were depressed, and all of these things that, the depression led to their addictions, right? That's what they thought initially. But then they realized that it was the addiction that led them to be depressed. And after we looked at the information and the research, we began to realize, man, that makes sense. It makes sense in our own situation, because sometimes, after we've done our thing, we sit there and we're depressed about what we've done, because a lot of times it prevents us from going where we want to go. So we looked at that and we dispelled those notions. We looked at trigger level. Our trigger level. Trigger level is where addiction happens. When you reach the trigger level, you are at the addiction stage. And we looked at how everybody has a certain distance away from the trigger point. And it's our biology that sets that trigger point. Some of us are closer, some of us are further away. And we can't control those things. Right? And we also looked at the choices, because what it led us to was we had a formula that leads to addiction, because we know it's not the type of person somebody is. We know that it's not a personality trait. So we say, what causes addiction? If it's not any of those things, then what causes it? And we looked at the formula. It's our biology plus our choices equals our outcome. Okay? Biology we can't control. It sets the point to where we are, according to our trigger level. But it's the choices that we make that are going to determine if we get closer, if we stay at that certain point, or we get further away from it. It's the choices and the decisions that we make. And that's just We found out too, in this life, it's the choices that we make that determine where we end up, on life spectrum. We want to be successful, we have to make choices that lead to success. Right? So it's the same thing. It's the choices that we make that lead us to. We looked at the illustration, of the rain, where I say we want to prevent. That's the main thing we want to do. We can prevent. We can't stop the rain. God controls that. We can't do anything about that. But we can prevent how wet we're going to get by using an umbrella. And so it's the same thing for our drug and alcohol use. We want to prevent problems from happening. And in order to prevent, you have to be proactive. That's another thing that when I teach teachers how to manage the classroom, the reason that I don't have to restrain my kids, the reason I don't have to tell them to get out of the classroom is because I'm very proactive. I know my kids. I know what triggers them to go into the fits of rage that they go into. And so, because I'm proactive, I don't do the things to trigger them. Right? And so that's what we're doing. We're in prevention mode. We want to make sure that we are working on being the best us that we can be. And we can only get to that level if we learn how to make better choices. All right, so we'll start today